to A Powerful Rise. I'm Shelby and this is my wife,
Cheree.
And today we are going to be starting a series of segments on my wife's life story. Who she is, how she got where she is, how she overcame a lot of things in her life, and what makes you you. Yeah?
Yeah.
It's going to be great.
We decided to go on after actually almost a year of thinking about this and doing a lot of healing and work. Decided to share my childhood and my life and how I overcame what I had to overcome and how I got where I am, and just a whole lot of like life choices and changing and things to where I've arrived.
Right?
Yeah.
That's good. So, you want to just start?
Yeah, we
start
can just
from the
start.
beginning. Okay. When were you born?
I was born in 1971, January.
January. So you're a Capricorn.
I sure am.
And where were you born?
I was born, I believe, in Gardena, and then later on raised in Torrance.
Okay. So, were your parents together when you were born and growing up?
The story, and some of this is obviously hearsay because I don't really speak with my parents now. I'm not really sure. I was really young. I know that I was told that my mother and my father divorced when I was 3 months old. I'm not sure if they were separated then or divorced. Yeah. So no.
They separated, and you lived with your
Mother.
mother.
My mother.
And do you have any siblings?
I do. I have an older sibling who is 3 years older than me.
And were you guys close when you were really, really young?
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, me and my sister were really tight growing up, I would say. Yeah.
So you lived with your mom. Your sister, I'm assuming, lived with your mom.
Yes.
And what was it like living with your mom?
At a very young age, I know that things were chaotic, I believe, and you guys, keep in mind, this is my perception of things. It doesn't make me right and it doesn't make me wrong, but I'm sure everybody has their own perception of what went on when you grew up and what it was like, but this is purely my story. So, my mother and father split when I was really young. I don't have a whole lot of memories when I was little. I don't know if maybe things were too much for me. I don't know. It was maybe traumatic when I was younger.
So let's kind of break it up a little bit. And if you don't remember age around there, then we can kind of switch it up. So you don't 1, 2?
I don't remember.
You don't remember. Okay,
Not at
3,
all.
4, still no?
No.
When do you start to really remember? Do you remember going to or being at your mom's and going to your dad's, or when did that happen?
I was told that, they would go back and forth, they didn't get along. So when they split up, I believe that what I've been told later on, speaking with my biological father, is that my mother didn't want to be married to him. He was a plumber. She wanted more. And they couldn't get along. And so she wanted to have a different kind of lifestyle than what she felt, I believe, my father was going to offer her. I believe he might have been a little bit more controlling, and she just didn't want to have that life with him. And my dad always wanted to be a father. He didn't see his life kind of going in this route. So he took kind of, I think, a turn for the worse when they split up, and he didn't want to live. I know that, not being in our life and being around. And I believe my uncle went in and bought him his first Harley or created one, probably built one. And so he lived a lifestyle of going from a plumber to a biker. Yeah.
Which
So
is quite the jump.
quite the jump. Yeah. So he became kind of like an outlaw, if you will. That was his kind of coping mechanism of how he could have some sort of value to live. Yeah.
Well, okay.
As for my mom,
That's
I
worse.
believe she was already dating even while pregnant with me, is what I've been told. Um, she always, I have segments that I remember, parts of my childhood. I don't remember all of my childhood. So, like, I remember certain things that were like turning points, and then there's some stories that my older sibling had told me about things that happened. And that's pretty much where I've gathered that young of my life, that piece of it. I believe my mom dated men on and off, and she got into a couple relationships that weren't very healthy, that might have been physical or verbally abusive. And it was back in the 70s, I was born in 1971, so my mom's raising young children in the 70s, and she's trying to find her way, I imagine.
Right. Doing the best you could at the moment.
Yeah.
So, from when you can remember, do you have stories or what it was like actually living in your childhood home?
The stories I have of, I there's one house that I don't remember at all. And then there's another one right around third, fourth grade in Gardena that I remember living at. We lived across the street from a liquor store. And I remember my sister putting on like a ski jacket for me, like she'd put me in this big snow jacket and she would drag me across the street and to the liquor store, and I didn't know why. It was hot in the middle of summer, so it was blazing hot, sweating, and I'm wearing this big jacket, and I could remember my sister stuffing candy in my jacket, stealing from the store across the way. I remember that. I remember things that we used to get in trouble with. I can remember me and my sister, we were home alone a lot. My mom was a working mom. She had a professional career, so she worked all the time, and we were kind of latchkey kids. We had a sitter, or sometimes when my sister, there's times where I remember we were home alone for a few hours until my mom got home from work. Being a single parent, my grandmother came in a lot to take care of us, which that's just the coolest. She was an extraordinary woman. Yeah, very sweet. Every idea that you have of like a traditional grandmother of what you would think was my grandmother. Yeah. So.
And was that your mom's mom?
That was my father's mother.
Okay.
She would come in and take care of me and my sister quite often, which was really cool. But I remember my mom being really busy and not really around a lot, because she had to provide and whatnot, I guess. So
when she was around, what was your role in the house? What was it like being Cheree as a child? Like from when you can remember, like.
I came into this world, I think, kind of an old soul. Mm-hmm. I felt very much when I got older that I was a protector of the family, so I had to keep my mother and my sister safe. I felt like that was my responsibility. And through the years, I felt like sometimes I took on like, especially when I got older, like more of a parenting role in the whole situation. But there's a lot. There's so much stuff, I remember my mom had foot surgery and she was vacuuming, and I was really little, and I was like, let me vacuum. And she's like, no, I'm just going to do it. Like I was bothering her and I was in the way. And she had these big pins in her feet. And I remember she kicked a backgammon set, and I saw my mom just like throw up and almost pass out. And I was just like, I could have done that for her, like I always felt like I didn't want them to be hurt or harmed, and I wanted to protect my mother and my sister, you know. And then, you know, I heard stories like as through growing up is we would go to the same school where my dad's new girlfriend was with her child, you know, and my sister would do things like sit on me in a clubhouse or a tree house to make sure I didn't see my father picking up some other child. Like my sister would try to protect me and in that aspect.
Wow.
Yeah, you know, so everybody, they moved on to new lives, I imagine. So you just don't understand that when you're young.
Little, yeah.
Yeah, and you're little. But my mom had a couple boyfriends, you know, that she was with. One of them owned a gas station I got really close with, and when they didn't work out, I was heartbroken, you know, because I enjoyed him. There was another guy she had married that got abusive, I think, with my sister, and you know, he went to go discipline my sister, and I guess he spanked her or, you know, hit her. And my mom ended that relationship is the story that I understand, you know, from it. So my mom protected my sister in that relationship and moved on, and then met the other additional one that had the gas station that I liked, and they were together for a little while. And then we moved to Torrance, and I remember when we moved from that house, we had a dog. Like, there's traumas that I remember. Like, I remember we had a dog named Dammit, and he was a German Shepherd. And I mean, I used to lay on my floor so that he can lay on my bed and be under the covers with a pillow because I loved him so much. I felt so connected to this dog. And it was crazy. And when we moved, my mom wanted to move us to a better area, you know, I guess, you know, moving on up type of thing.
Right.
And where we moved, they didn't allow to have dogs. And so she gave that dog to the neighbor that lived behind us. Yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah, it was difficult. I remember being heartbroken, and I remember the lady saying I could go back and visit anytime I wanted. And I remember there was a time I went back to go visit, and the dog had ran away.
Oh.
And I felt like the dog was looking for me. Yeah, it was really heartbreaking. And in that move, I forgot my times tables. It was like, I think the loss of the dog, you know, and everything, I couldn't recover being so young, you know, because I don't think I really had a voice when I was really young. I believe my sister spoke for me a lot, and I didn't feel heard. You know, this is back in an era where kids are seen, not heard. So a lot of it was you were told what to do, what to think, how to behave, and that was it. You know, it wasn't like, how are you doing? Are you okay? You know, my
Right.
mom had that relationship with my older sibling more than me. You know, it was almost like if there was a question, it was asked to my sister, and she would speak for the both of us, you know, and form her own opinion. And I played that part with my sister for many years up into our adulthood, to where I didn't have a voice. Yeah. So traumatically went to school. I believe in 5th grade was my first F. I forgot all my times tables. I couldn't remember my schoolwork. Something happened, you know, to where I just couldn't comprehend anything and retain it.
And what was that like for your mom?
When I got bad grades, my sister was like the type of individual, and I was compared to a lot. Like, my sister was the ideal appearance and idea of a perfect daughter, you know? So my upbringing was insanity. It was just insanity. It was kind of like, you know, my sister's senior picture was on our fireplace in a big poster-sized picture. And there was no pictures of me, you know. There was very few pictures of me, especially not individually. You know, if there was a picture of me, it was when we did a family photo here and there. But my sister was kind of like something worshipped. I used to joke around and run in the living room and get on my knees and bow to it and be
Oh my
like, I am
gosh.
not worthy. I'm not worthy. Yeah. And so my sister got straight A's. She didn't even have to crack a book to get a straight A. So my mother was very verbally abusive with me. And, I was stupid. Yeah. And that's where it began, like right around 5th grade. And it just progressively got worse from there, obviously. And then, the good thing about the move to Torrance was I ended up meeting a whole bunch of friends that were fantastic. Yeah, I had my best friend I met in 5th grade. Me and her stayed friends up through high school. There was a big group of girls that we all hung out and just had a blast. And I felt like I was important within that circle and that dynamic.
You found your tribe.
Yeah. But, over the years, junior high, being raised, like we had a street we lived on with a bunch of kids, and we got to play, come in when the street lights go down.
Right, yep, I remember that.
And even though me and my sister were tight, it was like my sister had a lot of insecurities too. I was chubby when I was younger. I had put on a lot of weight, so I was the fat girl, right? And if my sister was in a situation where we had a big group of friends around and she was feeling insecure, she would start poking fun at my weight. She would tell like the kids that on the street that I grew up, but she'd be like making jokes like, oh, we make Cheree's clothes out of the curtains that are on our sliding glass doors, and she's so big and blah, blah, blah. And she would do anything to make herself feel funny, where they were laughing, more accepting, and meanwhile at my expense.
Right.
So she wasn't really kind to me, but there was some sort of role that we played with each other to where, to me, I didn't care what she did to me, and I would take whatever she had for her to feel safe. Yeah. And it wasn't until many years later that I had to realize that, I mattered. And that was unacceptable. And I had to weigh out our relationship and think of what she brought to me, and she created a lot of chaos in my life, in the fact that I didn't have a voice and she was speaking to the family for me. And if I was going through a hardship, and I wouldn't reach out to my family members because that was her role. And next thing you know, the family's viewing me all a certain way, and it was through her eyes. It was truly what they were thinking was how she delivered it. And not any of them would call and really just be like, what are you going through? I love you. What's happening? Nobody did, because they all counted on, and this is with every relationship within my family. So my aunts and uncles, my grandmother, my father, my uncle, I just didn't have a voice growing up. So, or that platform, it was all everybody talked to. She was the older one and she spoke, and I didn't care. It was funny because there's clues that I had in all this to figure it out. But still, there was somehow I wanted her to be loved, and I could be okay not being loved.
Because you got a big heart.
Yeah. For her to be accepted and loved was important, because somehow I knew I was stronger. Yeah.
It's deep, babe. That's hardcore.
Yeah. And my mom, again, it was the 70s. My dad took a role when he went down the wrong path, I imagine. He became an alcoholic, a drug addict. I believe he dealt drugs streetwise. And, my mom was an alcoholic. She was a functioning alcoholic, a heavy drinker. So you know, I always saw her working really hard and then playing really hard, you know. So as time evolved, you know, going through middle school and getting into high school, my mom's schedule was pretty much going to work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. When she got off of work, you know, there was times where she would come and maybe do something that was a requirement of her parenting, and or she would just 5 o'clock go off to the bar, you know, because she met my stepdad at that point, which was a new individual she was with. And I think I was around 12, 13 in that area, you know, and maybe even 11. And I started catching on to something was not right, you know. She was dating my stepdad, and he was drinking all the time, and he would hang out at a bar all the time before she even met him.
Right. That was his thing to do.
And, you know, my sister wasn't having it. You know, when she met him, it was like, oh, great, you know, here's some guy. And I remember my sister always talking about him poorly, like she did everybody behind their back pretty much. And, you know, I was worried that when my mom met this man that things were going to change for the worse. And they did. I always wanted more for my mom. You know, I wanted her to strive and be happy. And I didn't feel that she was happy, but she chose her happiness. Mm-hmm. And my life became a whole lot of her just going to the bar. You know, so I dealt with my relationship with my mom went from very little time, right? To even less. And then if I was spending time with my mom or I got to see her, she was already intoxicated by the time she got home. And, you know, my sister being 3 years older than me, when she was 16, she got a brand new Toyota 4x4 in the driveway, which my grandmother and my mother helped her get. And she was working to pay for it and pay for insurance or some part of it, I imagine. And, you know, I was 13 and I was angry. I was very angry. I started realizing that nobody was coming home. You know, there was things about me that I was feeling, and I knew I was gay. I had a feeling I was different, but it wasn't something spoke about. So when you watch cartoons on TV, you don't really see...
You don't at all.
Yeah, like, oh, wait, they have gay parents? You don't really hear of it, but I knew something significantly was different with me that wasn't the same, you know, and I wasn't interested in boys, you know, in the way that I would see my sister go crazy over them, mm-hmm. you know, and I couldn't figure it out, and I had no one to talk to. I felt like I was not heard, not spoken to. You
were alone.
I was very alone.
At a very important time in your life because you're trying to figure out who you are.
Yeah. And I think my mom's drinking got the heaviest, like when I was like 13 through high school, through 18, you know, and I was on top of me trying to figure out who I am, not knowing who I am because it wasn't even open for a communication, like you didn't even see it, you know, on top of me trying to figure out who I am. I'm alone trying to have some sort of family life that's not there. It's non-existent. I can remember getting home from school, like when I was like in middle school, and I would be home, my sister would be off with her friends or somewhere, and the lights would just go down. And nobody would be home, and I'd be watching TV, trying to do homework that I wasn't good at, and I'd just get up and turn the light on, and I just didn't know what to do, you know, like, and I started getting to where it was like, why am I here? I don't want to live, you know.
What made you keep on living? If you were all alone, your mom's gone, your sister's busy, your dad's an outlaw, what pushed you to keep going?
I think back then, probably the discovery of life. I wanted to find out what was going on with me. And don't get me wrong. I mean, there's moments where I just didn't care anymore. I don't know. It just never led to me having the courage, to want to give up, and I'm grateful for that,
I am too. Sorry.
I remember that, like, during high school, we had on TV, and there was a movie that was on there called Personal Best. And I was watching it. It was about sports, and I played softball, for years. And I was watching these two women on there, and they were athletes, and I was like, this is so interesting to me, and I'm watching it. And then all of a sudden they kissed. And I was like, I've arrived. I have arrived. I was like, there's somebody out there in this world that is like me.
You saw yourself.
I saw myself, to where it was like, wow, nobody's spoken about it. Nobody's told me. Anytime anybody would use any kind of like gay or any kind of reference, it was always in a derogatory form, but you didn't really know a lot of people that were, and I mean, oh my God, I had arrived then. Yeah, I was like, and then from that point, what kept me alive is I wanted to know what it felt like to be loved, because I grew up not feeling loved or even part of my family. My sister used to always joke around and be like, yeah, her fun, what she thinks is funny is, you're adopted. Yeah, you're not from this family. And she was right. I always felt like I was adopted. I felt like I didn't know people. I felt like they didn't know me. I was living under a household, which my mom was a good provider, like bills were paid, we lived in a house, we had food, and on Christmas, boy, oh boy, we could have whatever we wanted, but there was no emotional support. There was no, are you okay? There was no, what are you trying to work through? There was no anything, and that's tough. That's tough, trying to figure out how to live and what you're going through. And then you're watching your mom drinking so heavily, your stepdad's drunk. I mean, when they would finally arrive home, it would be to watch Wheel of Fortune or Jeopardy. Sometimes they'd miss Wheel of Fortune. Sometimes they'd miss Jeopardy and not come home. But, it's by that time they would come home, and my stepdad was like with one eye, trying to watch the TV, so drunk, and he would go make like a grilled cheese. What?
No, I was, yeah, go on.
A grilled cheese and a tomato sandwich, and here I am just wanting to communicate with somebody who might possibly care that I'm alive. And he would be no conversation, answering all the questions on Jeopardy. And then he would get up after Jeopardy, walk up one step, stagger. He would hit the walls going all the way down our hallway. And then at the end, he would turn around and salute. And then go in. It was like, and this was over and over, Groundhog Day, And then my mom would be good and sauced, and she'd be like cutting in on her box wine or her big gallons of wine. And she would just be pouring. It was like on and cracking when she got home. And it got to where I would endure all of the mean things that she would say to me, just so that I could have a conversation with her. So I always knew possibly how it was going to go. I was always hopeful that it wouldn't, I would try to get to know her or have her get to know me a little, and then it would turn into everything I did wrong. How I was fat and nobody was going to love me. How I was stupid and I would be nothing. I was just like my father. I looked like my dad. She had just her disgusting look on her face as she was slurring her words all over, just telling me that I was nothing. And this went on for years and years and years of me trying to get to know my mother. And I would always try. I would always be like, well, maybe she's in a good mood now. And it wouldn't fail. You know, my sister would be out and about, and it was time for my mom to say things that were just horrific. I could still hear her voice to this day telling me how stupid I am. And if I didn't go to college, bring up my grades, I was going to be nothing. Nothing. You know, and I don't know, she was just always so disappointed in me. Just like, God, that look on her face and not having to see that is just a blessing in its own.
I can't.
Yeah. I remember a time like, and I would try to hide it from all of the people I went to school with. I didn't want them to know what my home life was like, you know. So a lot of my friends came and hung out at my house because no one was ever there. My mom traveled for weeks on end at certain points, and all my friends would come over and we would hang out, you know, at the house. But if they were home, I would not have my friends there.
You'd stay away.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And did your friends never end up finding out what it was like there?
You know, I heard later on, I communicated with a friend of mine from school, from junior high to high school. And, you know, I told her, I go, everybody didn't really know how bad my life was, you know. And she turned around and she said, oh, yes, we knew, Cheree. And it was like, wow, I tried to hide it. But I can remember my friends' moms, like, always kind of looking after me or trying to make sure I was included or fed, you know. Yeah, I saw a lot of that going on.